whenever the son becomes an ascetic. The intense concentration means you don't deal with anything anymore. It's not just your relationship with your parents, but with everybody. You no longer have a relationship with anyone. The only relationship you do have is with your master. It's not a selfish attitude at all. It's the necessary attitude, otherwise you can't progress. It's just not possible. In my view, as I was living with this master, who was guiding me in my asceticism, who accommodated me in his ashram, who fed me, my only relationship was with him. Everything else had completely vanished. Even the other disciples didn't interest me. I was totally absorbed in my asceticism. I would spend 18 hours in a state of trance. I had no time to think about anybody. What could we do? There was no way out of this dead end.
Pour sortir de cette impasse, et je ne sais pas pourquoi on a retrouvé.
And so, I'm not sure why, we gathered all his letters and began to read them to see if we could find anything.
Je sais pas ce qu'on cherchait finalement.
A clue.
Non, et puis on avait besoin de...
We needed to read those letters again.
Et dans une lettre, il se trouve que il nous parlait de...
And in one of the letters, he wrote about a trip he had made with Guruji to Bombay, where he had met a disciple of Guruji's, Mr. Amarse.
Monsieur Amarse, et tout à fait...
By chance, he had written his phone number. Well, that was it. We had found something. We rushed to the telephone.
On s'est précipité sur le téléphone, Jean s'est présenté, et a...
John introduced himself and said to Mr. Amarse, I know that our son, Jayramdas, because Gilles had found, or rather received from his master a Hindu name, our son Jayramdas came to your house a few months ago. Do you remember him?
Votre fils Jayramdas est allé chez vous il y a quelques mois. Est-ce que vous vous rappelez?
Yes, of course. I saw him only 3 days ago. He left for Banfad with Guruji 3 days ago.
Mais il était ici il y a 3 jours. L'impression de soulagement qui nous a envahis, c'était...
The feeling of relief that came over us was immense. Then John asked Mr. Amarse, if we came to India, could we see him?
Est-ce que nous pourrions le voir?
Well, of course, there's no reason why not. He's not locked up anywhere. You can meet Guruji and you can meet your son. There's no problem.
Vous pourrez voir votre fils, il n'y a aucun problème. Bon, le coup.
Well, after that phone call, we were emotionally exhausted.
Épuisé d'émotions.
We just looked at each other and said, so let's go.
Et on s'est dit, ben on part. When my master told me that my parents were there and that they wanted to see me, I answered that he was now my mother and father and that I didn't want to see them. He forced me to progress, to not burn my bridges completely. When my father saw me for the first time, his eyes filled with tears. More than my mother. My mother thought I had chosen the right path, but he was convinced I had gone mad, that I had been sent mad, and that I had been bewitched. We are neither mad nor anything else. We've experienced something different, that's all. Même si on retrouvait les mêmes traits, si on retrouvait la même voix...
Even though he had the same face, the same voice, we were faced with a personality that had evolved in a way that we obviously didn't understand yet.
On ne comprenait pas très bien encore, ça c'est évident.
I spent most of my time reciting mantras or prayers. I lived under a temple in a cellar, where I often found scorpions in the morning, and I was in there for the rest of the day. Often they would call me at a certain time, in the evening, and when I woke up, I realized it was already morning, and I hadn't been aware of anything. Physically, I wasn't there anymore. I was somewhere else.
Donc, physiquement, j'étais plus là, j'étais parti.
Quand Guruji disait c'est une âme indienne dans un corps.
When Guruji said, "He's an Indian soul in a European body," we understood exactly what he meant, because we could see that our son was really at home there, even though that hurt us.
Là, même si ça nous était quelquefois un peu douloureux. Mais à ce moment-là, on n'avait pas tellement évoqué le côté.
But at the same time, we hadn't discussed his spiritual quest.
Spirituel. Il était assez. Je crois qu'il n'osait.
He didn't know how to broach the subject with us, because he knew his father was going to get annoyed.
Son père allait certainement ruer un peu dans les.
I found it difficult to understand certain things.
Et que moi j'avais certainement de la peine à comprendre certaines choses. Il nous a dit un soir.
One evening, he said, "I'll give you some advice. Before you leave Bombay, you absolutely must ask Guruji to initiate you." We asked him, "But what does that mean?"
Mais vous verrez bien de toute façon.
Oh, you'll see. In any case, it'll do you a lot of good. You really must be initiated by Guruji.
À être initié par Guruji. On n'osait pas trop poser de questions.
We didn't dare to ask too many questions, and he didn't explain much, and none of it meant anything to us. We couldn't refuse, say, "I don't want this experience."
Et puis le jour de l'initiation est arrivé. Guruji nous a demandé.
And then the day of the initiation arrived. Guruji asked us to close our eyes, which we did. Then Guruji recited some things that we didn't understand, and he placed a rosebud on our heads.
Un bouton de rose sur la tête. Et c'est une expérience.
It's an experience that's difficult to describe.
Parce que c'était une sensation curieuse de cette rose.
Because it was a strange feeling, that rose that seemed to be very heavy, and at the same time,
Quand il a déposé cette rose sur nos têtes, là,
when he put the rose on our heads, there was a more intense circulation of energy.
Plus dense d'énergie, et puis la légèreté,
followed by a feeling of lightness.
Qui a suivi le processus là. Et
we felt in perfect oneness with ourselves. You can't rationalize what a guru is.
Le gourou est là. Il s'insinue sans qu'on sache comment.
The guru is there. He gets inside you without you knowing how or why.
Et il vous mène où il veut. Hein. Grâce à cette énergie là qu'il vous.
The guru takes you wherever he wants using the energy he transmits to you, which takes you out of your body to somewhere else. That is his strength.
Ailleurs. Ça c'est sa force. Là. Alors donc,
it was quite an incredible experience, I have to admit.
Je suis bien obligé de reconnaître.
यहाँ पर गुफा में उन्होंने तपस्या किया। गुरुजी जहाँ पर तपस्या करते।
Not far from here, there was a little house where at one time Guruji, Jayramdas and myself used to meditate.
जयरामदास जी को थोड़ा ऐसा एकांत का जरूरत था।
Jayramdas needed tranquility to deepen his meditation.
हमारे यहाँ से 1 किलोमीटर दूर एक गुरुजी का बोरिंग था।
He would sit over there, a kilometre away from the village, all alone, near a well.
कच्चे छोटे-छोटे कमरे थे।
All he had was his sadhu robe.
मात्र एक कॉपीन।
All he ate were sattu, the cereals we eat in India. They are very nourishing.
बहुत सात्विक।
And he meditated.
उसको पा करके और खूब ध्यान भजन जयरामदास जी करते थे।
From that time on, our relationship became very close.
तभी से हमारा इनका इतना गाढ़ संबंध हो गया।
We were like brothers, the two sons of the same father.
एक पिता के दोनों लड़के।
Now, when Jayramdas comes to visit, it's to pay homage to the god Hanuman and to Guruji.
गुरुजी के ऊपर बहुत श्रद्धा है। यहाँ पर
He told me that during his walk this morning, his master Guruji walked in front of him.
तो मुझे ऐसा लगा कि मेरे गुरुजी भी मेरे आगे आगे चल रहे हैं।
Au départ, il y a une relation qui se fait au niveau physique.
In the beginning, the relationship is on a physical level between the master and the disciple. It is a relationship based on love.
Si le maître et le disciple n'éprouvent pas un certain
If the master and the disciple don't feel a certain form of love for each other, progress is impossible.
On peut pas avancer, c'est pas possible.
If the master is constantly criticizing the disciple, he would not be able to withstand it all the time. So there really does need to be something positive right from the start.
Alors que ça soit un lien de père à fils ou un lien de mari à femme,
Whether it's a father and son bond or a husband and wife bond, it's up to us to decide, and it doesn't really matter. Finally, the further you go in the sadhana, the more you realize it isn't a physical bond after all. It's something completely different, something very subtle. Normally, the master teaches you by telepathy. He doesn't speak. That's how Guruji taught. He said very little, but he transmitted what he needed to transmit to his disciples when necessary to help them. You can't consider that a normal human relationship. It is a relationship that goes beyond usual human relationships, but it's a very worthwhile experience.
तो गुरुजी ने मेरे को इतना प्रेम दिया कि शायद मैं इतना प्रेम संसार में कहीं नहीं प्राप्त किया, कहीं मुझे मिला नहीं इतना प्रेम।
I will never find the love that Guruji gave me again. I dedicate my entire life to serving my master. In my dreams and when I meditate, he is like the gods Sita and Ram. My only desire now is to meet God and talk with him as I am talking to you now.
अभी जो मैं ये नेत्रों से जैसे आप और हम आपस में बात कर रहे हैं,
I have always followed the path shown to me by my master Guruji.
यही है कि मैं भगवान से जैसे हम और आप
That path is very good for my health because I have a heart condition.
और गुरुजी ने जो मार्ग बताया वही मेरे लिए बहुत अनुकूल हुआ है, मेरे शरीर के लिए भी।
My day-to-day life involves reciting 100,000 mantras, dedicating myself to prayer and meditation.
रोज हमेशा मेरे नित्य कर्म हैं, 1,00,000 मंत्र का जप करता हूँ और ध्यान योग का मैं विशेष समय।
I have no desire to start a family and have children. I want to spend my whole life praying for Hanuman and for Guruji. I hope that my prayers will bring some good to others.
और शायद मैं ऐसा संकल्प मेरा है, मैं भगवान से, गुरुजी से, महाराज से, हनुमान जी महाराज से मैं हमेशा यही प्रार्थना भी।
I hope to have good karma and, in my next life, to meet up with my master Guruji again.
ना कर सकूं और फिर कर्म अनुसार, कर्म के बंधन के अनुसार मुझे फिर जन्म लेना पड़े, तो हे प्रभु मेरी भक्ति हमेशा आप।
Being with Guruji again is my utmost wish.
जन्म में मुझे गुरुजी मिले। ज्ञान योगी मधुसूदन दास जी ऐसा मेरा अंतिम इच्छा है।
Guruji était un grand adepte d'Hanuman.
Guruji was a great adept of Hanuman. Such an adept, in fact, that Hanuman sometimes came out of his statue. Many times, Guruji's disciples had seen Hanuman come out of his statue and appear before them here in the temple. There were several disciples who would come and prostrate themselves here and enter very deep states of trance. There is extraordinary power in this statue of Hanuman. I myself spent 5 years adoring Hanuman.
Suivant les différentes divinités dont tu fais la cesse,
Depending on which divinity is the object,